The Detroit Pistons split the 2-game homestand over the weekend. They lose to the Houston Rockets, but get the win over the Sacramento Kings. We'll break down what we can take away from both of these games in today's episode, Locked On Pistons Podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Khahil. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons for the last 4 years, been a credential media member now over the last 3 years, and I appreciate all of you guys who make the Locked On Pistons podcast your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Later on, we'll discuss the Pistons' blowout win against the Sacramento Kings, and also we'll talk about how this upcoming road trip will tell a lot for the Detroit Pistons and how maybe they approach the rest of the season. I'll talk about what I mean later on. But we're going to start with the first game from over the weekend, which I think gives much more. Even though I'm recording this the day of the Pistons win against the Sacramento Kings, I think the game against the Houston Rockets tells a way bigger story and gives you a lot more to take away from with this team. Now, while I'm recording this, for those of you guys watching on YouTube, maybe wondering, Coot, why do you have like why does it look like you have like some kind of robe thing on? I don't know if you guys live in Michigan, but it's absolutely freezing right now. There's a winter storm going on, and I'm absolutely freezing. So I got this. I had to get some extra clothing on, man. I'm freezing. But let's. The Houston Rockets game, the Pistons lose 111-104. If you didn't watch the game, it was a competitive game throughout. For just that game, I thought that Cade. We'll talk about this in a minute. Cade didn't play very well. Didn't shoot the ball very well. They talked about this, him and JB. Today, talked about how he's dealing with that wrist injury. So he didn't shoot well. I thought he turned the ball over too much. And then also, I thought the fifth foul called on Ausar Thompson in the third quarter, who was having a fantastic game, that fifth foul really hurt them. And he needs to be smarter with his foul calls. It was one you could have done without. And I thought him getting that foul call really hurt them the rest of the game and kind of started the momentum going back to Houston's way. However, there's like a bigger picture thing here that I think needs to be the takeaway from this game if you watch this game. The Pistons obviously were not able to score much in this game. This was a defensive battle. Both these teams are not the craziest three-point shooting teams. Good defenses, dominate on the glass, that kind of thing. For the Pistons side, the Houston Rockets started doing something in this game that we really have not seen a lot this year since the beginning of the year. And that is they were trapping and blitzing Cade a ton. And I wanted to stay on that. The Pistons coming into this year, we're coming off a playoff series where the New York Knicks decided we are going to blitz and we are going to trap Cade almost every single time. That's what they did in the playoff series. And as the series went on, you saw the Pistons start to figure it out. Cade started to get the ball out of his hands quicker. They started dominating the 4-on-3 situations. That's what led to Ausar having some really good games in the last 2 or 3 games of the playoff series. It led to Duren really having an impact as a short roll passer, creating open 3-point looks for THJ and Malik Beasley and Dennis Schroeder. Like, the Pistons started to figure out, okay, if they're going to trap and blitz Cade, we're just going to get the ball out of his hands and trust that they can win the 4-on-3 situations. And that did happen as the series went on in the fourth quarter, or not in the fourth quarter, in that playoff series against the Knicks. Now, fast forward to the start of this year. There was a stat rolling around within the first month and a half of the season. I believe NBA University tweeted it out. I could be wrong with that, though. However, one of these major sports statistic Twitter accounts tweeted out, it was like, players who are scoring the most points per possession against traps and blitzes. And Cade, through the first month of the season, it was some of the best offense in the entire NBA was teams blitzing Cade. Because to start this year, you got a lot more aggression from Jalen Duren, obviously, and he was scoring. And you saw Ausar Thompson being pretty aggressive as a scorer early on as well. And what was happening was teams to start the year were operating under the assumption of, okay, we'll just let someone else beat us. We'll just let someone else try to do something. We're going to get the ball out of Cade's hands. But what they were failing to realize was Duren had improved, and he was dominating every single time. Every time they blitzed or trapped Cade, and Duren got the ball in the short roll, instead of him just only passing to three-point shooters and maybe Ausar cutting down the baseline, Duren has now improved as a dribble driver. He has improved in his footwork, his touch. He has just improved as a scorer. So he was dominating teams who were just tagging off the weak side with a smaller player. He was just dominating it. It was feasting. It was easy offense for the Pistons. Or if they did come up and tag on Duren, obviously Ausar was coming baseline with an easy dunk on a dump off. They even got Ausar up in screening action at times, and they were blitzing off of that, and Ausar was finding open three-point shooters. Overall, the first month or so of the season, teams' defensive strategy against the Pistons was trap Cade, and the Pistons were destroying it. They were absolutely killing it. They had a top 10 offense through the first month of the season. They were killing it. They were dominating this. Now, what happened, I would say around like late November, teams, I spoke about this in the podcast over the last few weeks, I'd say at the end of November, teams started to say, you know what, this is actually not good defense for us to do. Us blitzing Cade is putting us constantly in bad situations 4 and 3, and they now have players who have gotten better and are making us pay for doing so. So what teams have now started to do, or have really been doing for the last like month and a half, 2 months, since late November, I'd say again, they have instead just been playing super physical with Cade in the pick and roll, going over the top of screens, playing drop coverage, and tasking their point of attack defender with just sticking with Cade. And if Cade gets to the rim, if he gets to a mid-range shot, we'll live with the mid-range shot. If he wants to get to a floater, hey, we'll live with that. Now, Cade is so good that he's still able to create looks at the rim. He's still able to create looks for his teammates from beyond the arc. He's still able to create these different type of looks because Cade, great players, a strategy can only do so much with a great player. Like, eventually, the great player can outplay the strategy. But the strategy has worked somewhat for the Detroit Pistons. We've seen that their offense has fallen off over the last month. I'd say let's just look at, we're at January 25th. The Pistons offense has fallen off, and what's happened? What has happened? Oh, I picked the wrong dates for this. I'm sorry. But what has happened? The offense has fell down. Teams have realized that that's what the Pistons want them to do, and now they're forcing other players to create advantages of their own. Not just Cade creating advantages for others. It's now teams have realized no one else on the team can really create an advantage. Let's ask them to do so. So for the first month and a half of the season, towards the end of November, the Pistons had a 16th ranked half-court offense. Not great, but middle of the pack. Last year, they were like bottom 7 in the half-court. Since then, they have fallen all the way to 25th in half-court offense. Not great. The reason why I'm bringing all this up is because the Houston Rockets yesterday decided that they were going to go against this, and they were just going to start blitzing Cade. They were going to start trapping Cade, something that teams have decided they did not want to do anymore. And the Pistons were able, because they put a big on Ausar, and this is something I've talked about on the podcast as well. Putting a big on Ausar should not be a plus for the defense. That should be an instant L. You put him in screening action, you should be able to generate shots out of it. And they did start doing it. And they did start to generate shots out of it. And Ausar started scoring a little bit. And they started to find open three-point shooters with it. If teams want to play the Pistons that way, it should be pro-Piston. It should be favor in the Pistons' hands. The problem that you saw in this game against Houston were a few things because of this. One, once Ausar got into foul trouble, they were hiding their big on guys not named Jalen Duren, and the Pistons don't have another non-big outside of Duren who is a quick processor in the short roll, who is a good playmaker, so when Cade does get blitzed and he throws it to the guy in the short roll, they can make these quick decisions. Ausar and Duren really are the only ones. So once Ausar got into foul trouble, it really hurt them in that regard. That's one. Two, the Pistons also don't have a ton of three-point shooting to make teams pay for doing this consistently. In this game, Tobias was 0 of 3 from beyond the arc. Duncan in this game was 2 of 8. When Duncan goes 2 of 8, you're probably cooked because he's your only real volume three-point shooter. The reason why I bring that up, I am going to assume that defenses are going to start in the playoffs trying to blitz Cade. Now, I believe that is good for the Detroit Pistons. I believe that should allow them to generate easy shots. And I think it did against Houston. Problem is, they need more shooting to then take care of it, to take advantage of it. Because what the Rockets started to do, and what you'll see other defenses do, is when they trap and blitz Cade, they will rotate their defender, not from the weak side corner. They'll just rotate from the top of the key, above the break, the weak side wing, and they'll leave Tobias at the top, tag down with that, have Ausar be met by that defender, or Duren be met by that defender, and now Tobias is wide open, and you have to trust, hey, we're going to kick it out to Tobias. Can he hit these above the break threes? And he's shooting 30%, around 30, 31% above the break threes this year. He has not been very good on those. There was a possession offensively against the Rockets in the second half where Duncan Robinson's coming off of pick and roll, and the Rockets have literally left Tobias wide open right next to him, to his right, like 3 to 5 feet away from him, wide open. And Duncan doesn't even throw him the ball. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that Duncan's just flat out ignoring Tobias and doesn't trust Tobias. I'm not going to come out here and say that. But I do think that kind of reflects the feeling of when you're in the midst of a competitive playoff-type atmosphere game, it felt like, against Houston on national TV. You know what you want to get, what the defense wants you to get, and it kind of brings players to be hesitant to make what it seems to be the easy read. So that's why, a long story to get to the end of this point. It took a while to get here, but this is my point of bringing all that up, was that the Pistons have a unique set of players that can take advantage of that. If Cade wants to bring, or if defenses want to allow Cade to draw 2 defenders nonstop, the Pistons have 2 guys, an Ausar and Duren, who are good short roll players, who are good short roll passers, good short roll processors. They can make it pay. It's part of the reason why that trio still works. And it works so well, because they're all plus passers. That's what really makes it work, to be honest. But in order to really make teams pay consistently, you need shooting around them. Because what they'll start to do, which is something New York we saw in Game 6 of the playoffs last year, what they started to do was, especially in the second half of that game, they would have OG Anunoby on the weak side just crash down to Ausar cutting down the baseline and say, Duren, make the kick out to the wing. We're not going to, Ausar, we're done with that. We're done with Ausar getting dump offs. We're done with Duren getting easy shot to the rim in the short roll. Instead, we're going to make you make this read to the shooter, and we don't believe they're going to make us pay enough. And I think that's going to be the strategy from defenses in the playoffs. And I don't think the Pistons have enough shooting. I don't think they need to be top 5 in the NBA in three-point shooting. I don't think they need to be some, crazy three-point shooting team. That's not what I'm suggesting. That's not what their identity is. What they do need, though, is when teams try to play this strategy, be able to say, we'll just kill you with that. You have to get out of that. You have to get back to some normal defense. You can't do that. We will make you pay. And right now, they only really have one guy from the outside that can make them pay for playing 2-on-1, and that's Duncan. Tobias has been way too up and down this year from three-point shooting. He's been up and down a three-point shooter throughout his entire career. He has never been a high-volume three-point shooter. He has never been a really good three-point shooter, to be honest. He's always been around average to maybe slightly above average at times. And this year, he's not been even close to average. So I think they need to go. I think this game really illustrated a few other things. Now, Cade, I thought, didn't play very well. This segment's running really long. I'm so sorry, David Locke and Nick, everybody. I'm sorry. But Cade had 6 turnovers in this game. I also think Cade, after not seeing this many blitzes and traps in such a long time, was slow at reading it and getting the ball out of his hands early. I think if Cade plays a good game, they win by 10 plus in this game against Houston. There was a few times where he just threw inaccurate passes to guys in the short roll or saw it too late, and now he turned the ball over trying to get it up. It's too late. So I do think that played a heavy part in it as well, 100%. I thought Cade was a little bit surprised that they decided to go back to this. That's one. But 2, when they did go to it, it worked. You generated good shots. It was good process. But there was far too often, especially in the second half, I would say, where teams were forcing them to take or to pass the shooters that they wanted them to shoot, and the Pistons just don't have good enough shooters to make them pay consistently. So that was my biggest takeaway from the Houston Rockets game. A long segment, but I think it's very important. And I think that's exactly what the front office and the Pistons coaching staff is looking at when they come away from a game like this, and especially going into the trade deadline. So long segment, sorry about that. But let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. How you guys feel about this? What do you guys feel about, or how you guys feeling about the Pistons after the Rockets game? But coming up, we'll discuss their blowout win against the Sacramento Kings. Complete dominance on the offensive end of the floor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from a kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. The NBA trade deadline is basically here, and we want to give you a free month of our new Everydayer Club to help you get ready. If you need a group chat to keep up with all the chaos, join ours. The Everydayer Club gets you access to a group chat on Discord just for Locked On Pistons, or really any team you want to be a part of it, but you can join the Locked On Pistons Discord server, obviously. Plus, national chats where you can join and hang out with fans from across the league. You also get ad-free versions of the show, and if you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use code DEADLINE to get your first month for free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more, or you can also head to LockedOnPodcast.com/EverydayerClub today. Now, the Pistons just blew out the Sacramento Kings. I'm recording this after their game, and honestly, that first segment went very, very long. I think it was a worthy segment. I think we got to a lot of stuff. But even before we get to the Kings game, I'm going to decide to push it off even more because the Kings game, they beat a bad team. They blew them out. We'll talk a little bit about it, but honestly, there's not too much to really take away from that game. The Kings are bad. They're very bad. There were just a few more things I wanted to hit on in the game against Houston. Because I think the game against Houston, like I spent so much time on in the first segment kind of going over, it really did a great job, I thought, of illustrating where the Pistons are at, what their weaknesses are, how they can win, but also how can they lose. And I feel like something that needs to be understood by a lot of people is the Pistons are a great team. I fully believe they are a great team. They have played like the best team in the East. They have played like it to this point in the season. And by the time the playoffs roll around, I will still believe, most likely, unless something just catastrophic happens, knock on wood, that makes them, they fall off down the stretch, which I don't see happening, I will still believe they are a great team. However, great teams lose all the time in the playoffs. The playoffs don't have bad teams. Good teams get to the playoffs, good teams lose, and the deeper you get into the playoffs, more great teams start to lose. Great teams lose all the time. So just because you think, which I'm about to get to here, that the Pistons need to make a move to improve along the margins and kind of fill in some of these weaknesses does not mean you don't think they are a great team. They can be a great team and still be worried about these issues will come up in the playoffs that will haunt them. So some other things I wanted to hit on from this game with saying that, I loved how JB Bickerstaff made it a point to really get Ausar in screening action. He used them a ton in the pick and roll, which I've been asking for all year, and he did it a lot in this game. It was generating good shots. That's one. I really liked seeing that. Number two, Cade has been dealing with that wrist injury, which we talked about earlier. He played fantastic against the Kings, and he spoke about how his wrist was feeling better, so hopefully that is the case. However, you've seen that with the way the Pistons are built, and what their identity is, they cannot win high turnover. They are not going to win high turnover games like this against a team like Houston or a team like who they have coming up, Denver, or any of these other West Coast teams, Phoenix, Golden State. You're not going to go out west and turn the ball over as much as the Pistons did, especially as much as Cade did, and win those games. Got to take care of the basketball. I like some of the adjustments that JB Bickerstaff did. Thought it was a really nice game from Jalen Duren. Thought it was a nice game as well from Isaiah Stewart. There's just too much on the plate of Duncan. There's too much on the plate of Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson, for 97% of the season or something, has been absolutely fantastic. But in the games, because every shooter is going to have a cold night, in the games that he has a cold night, the team is just way too reliant on his three-point shooting to survive. And he didn't shoot well against the Houston Rockets, and it was a death nail for the Pistons. He shot 2 of 8. The team was 7 of 32 from beyond the arc. They hit 21% of their threes. You're not going to win that way. You're not going to win that way. So I'm really hoping that Trajan Langdon goes out and makes a move for some shooters. Because that's what this team needs. If they want to stay away and shy away from a huge move, that's fine. But adding shooters to the team, I think, is a must. You just have to do it. It will be the thing that brings them down in the playoffs if you don't. They will eventually run into a team that they just don't make enough threes against. Teams will strategize against them a certain type of way. They'll find open shooters, but those shooters just won't hit enough. That will be their downfall if they don't address it somehow. Anyways, we can leave that Rockets game now in the past. It was a good game, though. It was a good game. It was a very good game, I felt, to watch. Playoff atmosphere, physical team. It was a physical game. It was fun. But now, let's talk just real quickly on the Pistons win against the Sacramento Kings. They win 139-116. The biggest takeaway from this game is that the Kings' defense is just putrid. The Kings' defense is horrible. It's horrific. It's not an NBA team's worthy of defense. There was multiple times where they just flat out weren't guarding anybody. The Pistons had, I believe, 75 points at halftime. The Kings team. I feel bad for Kings fans because I don't know what they have to root for over there. Biggest takeaway from the Pistons side of things is Cade, like I said earlier, said after the game that his wrist felt a lot better. He shot the ball much better in this game. He was 13 of 22. He made 3 of 5 threes. So it was good to see that. And that is, we have All-Star break coming up soon. If it is something that still is lingering on and kind of bothering him on and off, you assume that All-Star break will be the time where he really gets fully healthy. But it's good to see him have a game like this and shoot well. I saw some confusion from some fans. This is an injury on his shooting wrist. This is his shooting wrist that he's dealing with this on. So it 100% makes sense why he would struggle shooting-wise. JB Bickerstaff talked about it before the game, and he said what he's going through isn't easy. He's gutting it through. He's being there for his teammates, but it's not an easy thing, And Cade said after the game, I believe also, that it's kind of just one of those things where he has to figure out if he's able to gut through it that day. It's kind of been like that day to day. That's why you've been seeing him on the injury report. One day he was day-to-day, or not day-to-day, questionable. The other day, it might have been this game when he was listed as injury management questionable. So it was good to see him shoot well, and hopefully the wrist is starting to heal to a point where it's just behind them. Because as long as Cade plays well, they'll have a chance in every game. He didn't play well against Houston. If he plays a good game, they probably beat Houston. So, that's good to see. Cade again, 29, 11, and 5. I believe that was his 24th double-double of the season. That's 4th in the NBA. Outside of that, I wouldn't really read into anything else that happened in this game. Ron had a good game off the bench. He was electric. Duncan shot really well from beyond the arc. He had a nice game. Dannon Shankins continues to be really good off the bench for the Pistons, 11.6 assists. Jalen Duren played well in his limited time. The main guys didn't have to play a ton at all, because this thing was a blowout halfway through the third quarter. That game was boring to watch because the Pistons were just dominating them. The Kings offered no resistance at all. I know there's a lot of fans who saw that the Kings had some of their front office members I felt like their whole front office really was at the Pistons game today. I know a lot of people want to look at that and think trades. It was said on the broadcast that they were there previously already, I believe, for Scott Perry's mother's funeral over the weekend, and he is from Michigan, so they all had came to support Scott Perry during a tough time. So I don't think there's anything to read into there. They were already in the city or in the area, so they came to the game. I think that's all that was. Some other minor things. JB Bickerstaff will coach one of the teams in the All-Star game. I think that's the right call. He's had a fantastic season. Obviously, the Pistons are first in the East. He deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. This has been a great season from JB, and I tweeted this out earlier before the game. More credit, I feel like, needs to be given to Tom Gores and we've said this on the podcast, I believe, in the offseason. Tom Gores gave Monty Williams a record deal in, what was it, a year, 2 years ago now? 2 years ago, he gave him a record deal. Courted him very strongly. Flew out to his house, flew him out to Tom's house, didn't take no for an answer, went and tried to give him anything possible to make him want to coach the Pistons. And he finally did. And after 1 year, it was clear to a lot of us that he just was not the right guy for the job. And he needed to go. And for someone who still had $60 million left in their contract, after very publicly courting this coach, and all the reports suggesting and knowing, everyone knows that this was your guy, this was your hire, that there was reports that the GM wanted to go somewhere else. This was your dude that you wanted, and it resulted in the worst season in Pistons history. And he still had $60+ million left. Tom Gores did something that not many other owners would have done. Swallowed their pride, admitted that they were wrong, continued to pay Monty his contract, except just not to coach for the team. Ate the money, ate $60+ million, then went and got one of the biggest names on the market in JB Bickerstaff when he was fired, brought him in, signed Cade to a max extension that same offseason, and now the Pistons are here where they're at. JB's been fantastic. He deserves everything, but also he deserves being able to coach an all-star team. He might win Coach of the Year this year. I think he deserves that as well. But also, if we're going to start talking about coaches and front offices deserving props, Tom Gores, look, he hasn't won a ton during his time in Detroit, but he deserves credit for what he did in this situation. And the fact that he continued to pour resources and pour money into this team, he cares. He does care. Now, did it always result in good things? No. But he does care. You have an owner that cares, that wants to spend money, and will admit when he's wrong and put money where his mouth is. If he doesn't do any of that, the Pistons don't have JB Bickerstaff right now, and they're still living out the contract of Monty Williams trying to make it work so he can prove that he was right. So, JB is great. Trajan has been great, and I think Tom has really become great at this as well. All of them deserve a ton of credit. Coming up, this Western road trip, I think, is going to tell a lot for which direction the Detroit Pistons go. We'll talk about what I mean coming up. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Pulled up the Game Time app, picked an upcoming NBA game, and had tickets within minutes. Love seeing the all-in price up front, no surprise fees at checkout, zone deals stood out, choose the section, Game Time picks the seat, and you save. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Again, gametime.co, not .com. With Game Time, use LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. So, I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, the Pistons had a lot of home games over this last stretch. They played the Knicks at home, Bulls at home. They had to play LA, the Clippers, at home, Suns at home, Pacers at home, Boston at home, had a road game against New Orleans, which is an easy one, then back home again for Houston, then back home again for Sacramento, and now they finally go back on the road for a little bit. They go back out west where they're going to be playing the Denver Nuggets, the Phoenix Suns, and the Golden State Warriors. Why is this important? This is important because this is basically, this 3-game stretch is going to lead them into the week of the trade deadline. The last game is Golden State on the 30th. That will be, 6 days away from the trade deadline? It will be the week of the trade deadline right there. Now, the Pistons will have 3 games at home during that actual trade deadline week between the 1st and the 5th. But how they play on the road against some good teams, I think will really impact which way Trajan Langdon decides to go. And there's been reports from Chris Mannix, who says that he's heard that the Pistons don't want to make any big moves, any big sweeping changes to the roster. I want to make sure everyone understands this as well. That does not mean that Trajan doesn't want to make a trade or won't make a trade or is unwilling to make a trade to upgrade the team. That is not what that means. What that means is that, and it's something I believe has been true, I think a lot of people understand this, is that it means he doesn't want to make any big changes to the core of this team. And I think that means really Cade, Ausar, Duren, Stu, Ron, because I think some of those players are the ones opposing teams are asking for. I know opposing teams have been asking for Ausar. I know there's been some teams that have inquired about Stu. There has been teams that have inquired about Ron. And those are the guys that Trajan does not want to move on from. So they have no interest in making any big sweeping changes to the core of their team. Does that mean they are uninterested in making any moves or upgrading at all across this team? I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that's what that report means. I don't think that's the case. Now, does that mean I believe they 100% will make a move? No, I'm just saying it's not completely it's not off the board. That's not what that report means. If the Pistons go out, honestly, I don't know what outcome would mean the most. Like, if they were to go out on this Western road trip and struggle, would that make Trajan more aggressive to make a move? If they went out on this road trip and played well, would that make him want to make a move? Because, this team's playing, they're even winning games against some good teams on the road in the West. If I were to make an upgrade, who knows what we could do? Or they struggle and he says, you know what? We know what this season is. We think that we'll have a great year, but if we end up being clipped in the playoffs, that's fine. We made a big step forward. I don't want to rush anything. Or do they play really well on the road? And he's like, we already have everything we need. I don't need to make a move. I don't know which way, honestly, what outcome impacts the most. But I do think how they play during this road trip against 3 straight good Western Conference teams. Now, the Warriors did lose Jimmy, but playing against Steph in Golden State on the road for a young team, I think it's not something easy either way. I do think, just like you got a read, or at least I feel like, you got a read on this team and really got some clear insight into strengths, weaknesses, what could actually hurt this team against Houston. I feel like you will get some of that against Denver. You'll get some of that against Phoenix. You'll get some of that against Golden State. So I think it's a big-time stretch for the Pistons. They have put themselves in a situation where just avoiding completely throwing out the whole trade point of view of it, even if they were to struggle 1-2 on this road trip, they've built such a good lead for themselves in the East. They have a 5.5 point lead, or a game lead, I'd say, over the Boston Celtics in the East. So even if they were to have struggled on this road trip, it's not going to be like big panic mode. They follow it up with a home game against Brooklyn, another home game. They played 4 straight home games, one against Brooklyn, then against Denver, but then against Washington, and then the Knicks. So, and then they got the Hornets, the Raptors. They actually, you know what? Outside getting back right with the Brooklyn Nets and the Wizards, they honestly got a decently tough schedule here, right? Going into the trade deadline, then right outside of the All-Star break. To play the Raptors, who are a top 6 team in the East, the Knicks. You play the Knicks again. You play the Knicks twice. You play the Nuggets twice. Actually, you play the Spurs at the end of February, then the Thunder, and then the Cavs again. Then this month of February is going to get hot. So I'm interested to see how they perform during this road trip, and they better be ready for this stretch coming up because the end of February actually gets pretty hot. So let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil, how you guys are feeling going into the road trip, and how do you think this road trip could impact what Trajan Langdon wants to do going into trade deadline week. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there, and peace out, everybody.